Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is now 7 p.m. and we are live online.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to call the meeting to order. First is, let's just do a pledge. Stand. Flag's behind you. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay, let me do a roll call. Molly Rhodes, are you here?
Here.
Amber Grant?
Here.
Paloma?
Here.
Pam?
Here.
Dan? Here. Lee is here. Jeff is ill and excused. Okay, I see the city administrator. Is there someone?
City attorney's on his way.
On his way. Okay, so we're expecting him in person.
Yes.
Okay. So the first order of business, we have a couple of community segments. The very first one we want to do is for Barbara Milligan. And so Heidi, do you want to come up and do this?
Good evening, everybody. I'm so happy to be able to honor Barbara Milligan. She truly is a part of our family at the Recreation Center. In 2013, Barbara was working at 23 West Center Street with a different organization. She was there before any of us. When the city moved in the following year in 2014, Mark Price knew right away that he wanted her to join our team and worked to have Barbara become employed with the City of Beacon. For over 10 years, she's had a smile and kind word to say to everyone that walked through our doors. Her dedication to her profession was exceptional. She should feel very proud. She knew the schedule of the building better than any of us. She even knows our license plate numbers, and she plays the numbers often. She found every loose cricket that found its way into our building. We know she'd never kill a bug because she won't get that close, but it still counts. She found alternate, longer routes to walk to the building when the Canadian geese were out to get her, but she was always on time. We called her Barbara for over 10 years when everyone else in the world knows her as Miss Ann, but she played along with us the entire time. Miss Ann, Barbara, brought sunshine into our office building each and every day. We miss our daily chats with her and the many, many laughs we've shared over the years. We wish her all the happiness in the world, and we hope the bingo halls and casinos know how lucky they are that she's officially retired.
So, hang on. Can't go now. So I have a certificate here. Why don't you come on this side? Yeah, come on in the middle. All right, so this is City Beacon Certificate of Recognition presented to Barbara Milligan and her fan club. In recognition of appreciation for over 10 years of dedicated public service to the City of Beacon, signed today by the Mayor, Lee Kyriakou. Congratulations. All right. You doing it? Okay, so this will be one, and then we'll turn around.
Oh, I
You already did it?
Yeah,
All
unless
right.
you want one with family.
Yeah, you guys want to turn around, or you all want to come up and do one with her? All right. Yeah.
These are for you, Barbara.
Down and out.
Oh, really?
Heidi did a great job.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Heidi's close to her.
Thank you. Have a wonderful retirement.
Yes, thank
All
you,
the
Barbara,
best.
so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Heidi, for doing that. Heidi
Yeah.
Harrison, for people that don't know, is the Deputy Director of Recreation, and she's standing in for Mark Price, who couldn't be here tonight.
Thank you, Heidi. Okay, the other public community segment is with Metro North, and they're going to talk about their transit-oriented development RFP. Andy and Nick are both here, so let me introduce the two of you, and then I'll give you the floor. So come on up. The first one coming is Andy Booter, and then the one behind him is Nick Roberts.
And Mayor, just as background, Andy is the Director of Government and Community Relations, and Nick Roberts is the Senior Real Estate Manager in the MTA Transit-Oriented Development.
And you all have a presentation, and then we'll have some questions, I'm sure.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. I will let Nick run us through the presentation.
Again, just introducing ourselves.
And
I'm
Nick, yeah, use the,
Nick Roberts. I work in the MTA's Transit-Oriented Development Group, which is the division within the MTA that's responsible for, among other things, working with developers to generate revenue for our MTA capital program through development of MTA assets like the one that we'll be discussing this afternoon or this evening, I'm sorry. So, next slide, please. Now, just sort of starting with the basics of the RFP. We issued this RFP earlier this month, November 1st, and it is for the north lot. I think many of you already have a pretty strong familiarity with the station area, but the bulk of the parking for the station is consolidated on the east side of the tracks. There's a south lot, there's a center lot, and then there's the north lot. Just to be clear, the development site is only the north lot. There will be no development opportunities on the center and the south lot. The RFP is offering a particular property interest. It's a 99-year ground lease, and what that means in effect, one important thing that it means is that the MTA is going to retain fee ownership of the property for the foreseeable future. We're going to be leasing this property to a developer who over the course of the 99 years will effectively have an ownership right, but that fee, the ownership fee, will remain with the MTA. Based on analysis that we have done internally, we're projecting that the site can be developed for roughly 300 multifamily units. This is with the expectation that the project is developed in compliance with the Waterfront Development District. This is not the first time that the MTA has attempted, well, I'm going to take that back, I'm going to reframe this. In 2008, we issued what is known as a Request for Expressions of Interest, which was an attempt to sort of plan the future development of the site for a variety of different reasons. The RFEI didn't gain traction, but it's my understanding that one of the good things that came out of that particular process was it spurred forward the city's, the evolution of the city's waterfront development district. And it was really the development district that very thoughtfully put together this cohesive, comprehensive plan as to how to ensure development ties in with the revitalization of the waterfront. My group has been attempting, we've been looking at the north lot probably for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, as a development opportunity. And the reason why we're issuing the RFP now is the Governor Hochul has made available what is referred to as rush funding. This is $500 million in state funding intended to facilitate the construction of up to 15,000 housing units on state-controlled property, including the north lot. One of the most difficult things that we face when we are developing a property in our service territories is how to replace the existing parking, particularly in this instance where there are 483 spaces. Unsubsidized, the cost to replace the parking would effectively put this project in the red from the outset, without any consideration for construction costs or financing costs. To say that a little more succinctly, if we did not have the rush funding, which is intended again to subsidize the developer's cost to replace the existing parking, we would not have been able to issue this RFP. Next slide, please. So I want to talk quickly about some of the issues or considerations that are driving the design and development process. To start with, the design, let's just take the first 3 bullets. There's the Waterfront Development District, there's workforce housing program, and the all-electric building law. These are all, sort of fundamental considerations of the city's broader development plan for the city, and we expect that respondents to the RFP will provide responses that comply with each of those, with the development district, the workforce housing, and the all-electrical building law. Another consideration that will be driving the design process is utilities. At the moment, the site does not have water or sewer. As part of the development process, the developer will be responsible at his cost or her cost to connecting the project with the existing water and sewer main. And on a very similar vein, the developer will also be responsible for building out a pump station, because the new pump station that will be specifically sized for this project. Another consideration that is sort of central to this design process is a connection to Cedar Riverfront Park. We know this is something that is critical to the city. The flip side from our perspective is it's also a very, very complicated and costly undertaking to actually create a pedestrian connection over live track. So the direction that we've given to our respondents or potential respondents to the RFP is you must design the project in such a way that it doesn't preclude the possibility of having a pedestrian connection from the project to the waterfront park at some point in time. So all these responses to the RFP will be designed so a waterfront connection at some point can be constructed. And the last three requirements that I want to discuss are Metro North requirements that again are fundamental to this process. One is the one-to-one replacement parking requirement that Metro North has. Again, there are 483 spaces currently on that north lot. They have to be replaced in kind. I think, as anyone knows who uses the station on a regular basis, the station draws from a very large catchment area, both east of Hudson and west of Hudson. And that is really the factor that's sort of necessitating this one-to-one replacement parking. The right-of-way setback, this is also critical. The setback is in reference to how closely you can build up against the track. There has to be a 25-foot setback between the westernmost edge of the project and the track. And then last but not least is this dedicated drive aisle. Just north of the development site is Metro North employee parking, and then north of there is a Metro North yard. Metro North needs access to their yard on a 24/7 basis, which is why they will need this dedicated drive aisle. And again, these are all things that the developer will have to incorporate into the project, and as part of the RFP process, this is really sort of the first time or the initial step in the process of fleshing through these various issues.
Just before we move on, the one-for-one replacement parking is one-for-one replacement commuter parking. Any parking requirements that you have within your zoning for the housing is in addition to the commuter parking. So they will have to account for their own parking according to zoning in addition to the one-for-one commuter parking replacement. Next slide.
Yeah, next slide, please. The center lot garage. This is, as it notes on the slide, this is optional. Our expectation is developers will provide the replacement parking in one of two ways. They're either going to incorporate it into the project itself, or they'll construct a standalone garage dedicated to this replacement parking. The idea with the center lot garage is, instead of putting the replacement parking on the north lot, which is a somewhat constrained development site, you would shift the dedicated parking to the center lot and build it in a standalone garage. The benefits, hypothetically, or at least conceptually, is it's less expensive to build parking generally in a standalone facility rather than having it incorporated into the development project itself. It's cleaner from an operational perspective. You're not necessarily mixing Metro North commuter traffic with resi tenants. And then in terms of the actual deal structure, ground leases are a particularly difficult type of interest to structure. If you have, it would just be a cleaner transaction if the Metro North parking were separated out from the resi parking. But again, I want to emphasize that this is an optional RFP scenario. Respondents will be required to submit scenarios or responses that incorporate the parking into the north lot. If in the process of putting together their proposal, they think it may be more financially feasible and design-wise easier to put it on the center lot, that is something that we will take into consideration. And then just two quick things on the center lot garage scenario. First is the footprint. We've had a number of respondents reach out and ask, why is the footprint sized the way it is? To the right of the yellow outline of the center lot garage, there's the Durrell Hat Factory. This is a fairly sensitive piece of infrastructure for Metro North. They don't really want to see it incorporated into a future garage. And then just south of the footprint, this is where the center lot transitions from light industrial to waterfront development district zoning. And it's our hope that at some point in the future, we'll also be able to develop that space into multifamily. Last but not least, if the center lot garage concept actually gains traction and is something that our designated developer wants to see move forward, this would be subject to all the city's normal zoning, seeker, and site review processes. Next slide, please. This is a confusing slide. I apologize, in part because I was the one responsible for this slide, but the point of this slide is simply to indicate that the development site, this north lot, is comprised of two separate tax lots. One of the tax lots is what you see in the red dashed lines. The other tax lot is in the blue dashed lines. The reason I'm mentioning this is because, particularly of this blue tax lot, the site as of right now is not strictly as of right, or it's not fully in conformance with the waterfront development district, in part because the blue tax lot, the westernmost edge of the development site, falls outside of the waterfront development district. And if I remember correctly, there's also a 5-acre threshold in the development district. Our site is about 4.5 acres, maybe just a bit shy of 4.5 acres. Clearly, we cannot grow the site, so we're hoping to work with the city to amend the WDD to allow for a slightly smaller development footprint. Next slide, please. RFP objectives. Anytime we issue an RFP, one of the top line objectives for us is to generate financial returns that help us support the MTA's capital program. The capital program is the pot of money that the MTA uses to keep the system in a state of good repair, if not advance it beyond a state of good repair. So this is certainly an important consideration when we look at responses to the RFP. Second, contextually designed multifamily housing. It's a bit of a mouthful, but we recognize that this is a very important site for the city in terms of creating a destination, a welcoming space to the city when people get off the train. It's also tied into this broader comprehensive plan of revitalizing the waterfront, tying it into downtown Beacon. And this is a similar objective for the MTA. We want to see something that is, for a lack of a better word, impressively designed. That is, I mean, it's difficult to legislate design, but we would like to see something, and we're encouraging respondents to propose designs that stand out. Activate station area, West Main Street, and the multimodal first mile, last mile improvements. These are complementary objectives. Similar to this contextually designed multifamily housing, we want to see a project that doesn't turn its back to the station area and to the rest of the city. We want to see something, a plan that is intended to activate the station area and sort of facilitate this greater connectivity between the station area and the rest of the city. In the process of doing so, we also want to see attempts over time to reduce sort of the reliability on parking. We want to get more people to the station without relying on cars, and that's sort of the basis of first mile, last mile. It's the objective of that type of thinking, and we're hopeful that the development project will facilitate those types of improvements.
Well, not completely analogous. The model that we often hold up, and we can share some photos of, is Harrison, where we had a transit-oriented development project, one of the first and most successful that we've had at the MTA. And there it really transformed what was just an open flat lot into something that helps build the actual village more. They have retail there, they have additional parking, they have housing, and it's something that they worked with the existing, again, within the existing zoning of the village, so it fit the profile, and it was something that was designed to be more appealing. It's not just a box tossed, a large box building fit in. It was something that was supposed to be, help draw people in, had green space, had created something that was connected to and built on and added to the community, not just was more housing for the sake of housing.
Thank you. Last slide, please. Next steps. The submission deadline is December 18th, so a month from today. Once respondents have submitted their proposals to the RFP, we're going to proceed to what typically takes 3 months. This is called the MTA selection process. We establish a committee within the MTA that vets all the responses. We identify or shortlist respondents that we want to engage further. And again, that's typically a 3-month process. At the conclusion of that process, we will we will select our preferred developer, and then we go through a somewhat Byzantine process of getting this preferred developer approved by our board so we can then negotiate the actual transaction documents. And the hope would be that once we have this conditionally designated developer in place, we would then start the seeker and planning board review process in the first quarter of 2026.
And when we were here 2 weeks ago on Zoom, we welcomed questions from everyone. We have, I know, a lot of those questions already assembled by Chris, so we're happy to run through a lot of those right now that wasn't covered and just make sure we go through them in more detail to make sure that you have everything as well. And again, we were here 2 weeks ago, obviously. We're back now with a much more detailed presentation, kind of diving into the weeds of this. And we will also continue to have a dialogue. And again, we're partners with the city. It is all within, as of right, that we're trying to do this. We're trying to abide by your zoning and make sure that this is a partnership. It's going to go through your planning board for site approval. It's all controlled by the city in that way. So when we're talking about it, we're really going to make sure that we're continuing the lines of communication which were started a couple weeks ago and are here now. The first question that was submitted here.
Hang on a second. I just want to add a little context that is city context, right? So as you mentioned, in the last go-around of our comprehensive plan, we rethought our zoning down at the waterfront. We put in sort of, both form-based zoning, what our objectives are. We included all electric. We included an affordable housing component. So those thought, as opposed to 2008, where Main Street was still viewed as a little shaky. There was some concerns there, and I think we've got a booming Main Street. The other thing is our zoning also from Main Street down, we've created a new district called a T district. I'm sorry, no, it's not. I'm sorry? No.
Linkage.
The linkage, L, yeah, the linkage district. And that is conceptually trying to reconnect our Main Street down to the waterfront, which was disconnected during urban renewal. And we're looking for businesses on the ground floor, kind of commercial with residential on top, sort of Main Street style, again, form-based zoning. And the connection point is West Main, right? Because your site, the north lot, fronts West Main, and doing that in the right way, I think, will be a really good connection. You mentioned the other piece of the puzzle, which is on the Riverside is the Seeger Riverfront Park, and wanting to figure out how we connect that and integrate it into our community. And then you also mentioned the intermodal. We're very interested to see the bike connections and the other kind of transportation options other than cars in the process. So I just wanted to add that context. That's exactly what the city's looking for, and then I'll let you guys go to questions. All right?
Sure. The first question was about traffic and how would traffic be studied. Again, the project will have to go through planning and seeker review after it is selected, and that's when that process will take place. It will take place as part of the standard review process there. So traffic studies that are normally required will still be required based on your... Nick can tell you more about what's required there than I can, than Nick or I. Same thing with level of affordability. Again, we're requiring things based on what was the standards that you have laid out as the policymakers for Beacon. So we're following that as our baseline. And when it comes to this project, once we find a developer, we're not going to really be dictating elements of the project to them as long as they're meeting within the specs that have been laid out, and we've laid out the specs that you laid out. So hopefully that is where we can continue to build off of, and that you, hopefully you, during your process of looking at the master plan, you've created a great vision for the city that we can help make a reality. Level of interest, I can let Nick talk to a little bit.
Sure. So in the last week, we've had a site visit, which was last Tuesday, and then on Friday, we had an information session, a virtual information session. And it's been encouraging to this point in time, the responses that we've gotten. We're drawing a lot of interest from a range of types of developers, local developers, regional developers, even developers in New York City who are looking to expand their presence into Westchester, into Dutchess County. So the response thus far has been, it's been very encouraging. And obviously we hope it continues all the way through the submission deadline.
The next question was on the parking structure. Again, we kind of actually went through that in detail. It would be subject to the same SEQR review and site approval that is required. And again, that it's just an option. It's not necessarily preferred or a designated option. It's just making sure that there's enough different ways that this project can move forward, that we invite as many people to draw interest as possible. Again, we were talking about retail and commercial uses in space. Your zoning does call for the possibility of ground floor retail. I think it actually makes it appealing to have ground floor retail based on the code that you've put in place. We're not necessarily going to be dictating what sizes or types of retail or anything of that nature. That will be based on what the developer feels is best for the market. As you said, Main Street is booming. More and more tourism is coming here on a fall basis and at other times of the year. So I do think that a developer looking at that site that would be very interested in putting Main Street retail there. So I think it would end up being something that is drawn in because of the nature of Beacon. But it's not necessarily something that we would be dictating within our standards or process. There was a question about whether or not EV charging would be provided. With our parking standards do have EV within our new lot build-outs, and within our existing lots we've been adding it as well. We don't have a set standard on exactly how many spots I could tell you would be EV charger off the top of my head, but I do know that we do have that as something that we build out in all of the lots and that we've been expanding across a lot of our properties. There has been some questions asked about the 24 access to the yard, the small yard area that we have north of our employee parking. That is something that is already there. It's been in place for decades, with 175 years coming up for the Hudson Line. Yard space is something that we don't get new yard space. It's always things that are existing. And again, it's staging areas are typically areas where we'll use transfer points. Our high rail vehicles, which are, if you've ever seen a truck driving on tracks, that's what we refer to as a high rail vehicle. It's a vehicle that can drive either on the ground or on our tracks. So that's a spot where they'll access. That's a place when we're needing to move ballast in, when you're talking about different events. A lot of times, if it's a smaller thing, we can bring in a truckload through that type of spot. We'll have staging. There's a siding over there where we may have equipment that's left, so it's not blocking the main line at different times. So that is a spot that's used. It won't be used more or less than it has been in the past. It will continue to be used the same. So the fact that you're like, I'm not sure if anyone realizes that there's people going there on a 24-hour basis, but it's typically during emergencies that they're going there late at night. It's typically a daytime spot where crews are coming onto the right-of-way or leaving the right-of-way. But it's just a spot that we will continue to need to have access to in order to continue to run and operate the railroad. Sewer and water, we mentioned upon that earlier. That will be the responsibility of the developer, where they have to build a new pump station in order to connect in. Number and size of units, I'll let Nick talk to that.
Sure. Number and size of units, we don't specify a specific type of unit composition in the RFP. Based on the conversations that we've been having with developers who are expressing interest in the RFP, our expectation is the unit size is going to skew somewhat small. We're going to be looking at a project that's probably comprised majority studios and 1-bedrooms. I don't think there will be very many, if any, 3-bedrooms. There will certainly be some 2-bedrooms, but again, the unit size is going to be targeted to a demographic of people in their 20s and 30s, and probably people who are looking to, I'm trying to think of what the right term would be, downsize in terms of the space that they have.
Actually, I'll let Nick continue on with the pilot and abatement schedules.
Sure, do you want me to talk about the ground?
I'll do that.
Okay, so pilot and abatement schedule, the MTA has statutory authority to create a pilot structure. Typically what we do and what we will be doing in this instance is we will create an abatement schedule that models what the Dutchess County or the city typically offers for these types of developments. I refer to it as a 210. Doesn't necessarily have to, we can get into more detail if necessary, but the short answer is we will be creating a pilot. It's going to follow the standard structure that the city would offer, and we will figure out a revenue sharing methodology with the city as we get farther through this process. Sure, ground lease. Does the ground lease approach mean these apartments will always be retailer leases? Quick answer to that is it's very difficult to build condos on a ground lease, so there is a very high likelihood that that over the course of the ground lease, these units will be rentals. There's the possibility that at some point they could transition to co-ops, but my expectation at minimum, or for whatever it's worth, is that these will be rentals.
Site plan and seeker approval, I think we've kind of hit that one about 12 different ways. But yes, it follows the city's seeker and site plan approval process. We do not dictate that. I think there was also a question about environmental conditions and flooding in the area, and that's again something that when a developer is building in this type of area, they take into account. They do their own environmental studies, they know what they're building, they provide the extra drainage that they need, and they will account for stormwater and making sure that they are not building something that will flood out. But that is something that they definitely are aware of and will be aware of.
Oh, microphone.
Are aware of and will be aware of, and it does not impact the overall buildability of the space. It's just something that needs to be accounted for in the design. And I think that covers all of the pre-submitted questions.
Well, just to that last question you answered, does that apply also to underground parking? So I know the floodplain has changed down there, and when I talk about this project, they ask if there's a requirement for parking. I say, well, they'll probably go underground, and then everybody, looks at me like, whoa, how are you going to do that?
It's a good question. I actually think in this instance there will be no underground parking. It's too costly to build.
I see.
Even with the rush funding that's being made available. So, which again is one of the reasons why we've offered this center lot garage concept, because fitting the 483 spaces plus the parking needed for the resi on the north lot, it's definitely doable, but it may simply be easier to have that parking on the center lot.
Thank you.
Sure.
Now, I saw in your slides, so this is the period that people are developing proposals to you, to Metro North. You're going to be reviewing that, and the expectation is it will get firmed up into a full proposal that we'll start to see toward the end of next year, and we'll start to go through planning process and seeker in 2026.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we're not expecting an answer for a while.
No, sadly not. I wish we could expedite this process.
No.
This is generally how long it takes us to get this kind of stuff done.
I appreciate that you noticed in your slides the all-electric building law. Can you speak more about how that comes into play with the RFP? I just noticed it wasn't mentioned in the text.
Oh, it should be mentioned in the text.
Okay, I missed it.
No, it's fine. I mean, there's a lot of text, unfortunately. That was my counsel's doing, not mine. But it is there in the text, and respondents are obligated to submit a proposal that is consistent with that law provision.
Great, thank you.
So I wasn't able to find the use tables. Does anyone here know if standalone parking is a permitted use in light industrial?
I don't. I made a comment to look at that.
Okay, thanks.
I'd also like to know the current height, our current height restrictions in that area too. That would be useful.
I believe it's 45 feet, but
We'll make Nick work.
Yes.
Right, and that's a different height in the middle section than it is on the north lot.
correct.
Right, the north lot, because it has the escarpment behind it, the zoning permits a higher maximum height.
75.
It looks like for light industrial, it's may not exceed 32 feet at Beekman.
Other questions by the council?
Just one last comment, and I know that this isn't the stage of the project that you're in, and it's probably removed a little bit from the decision-making, but if we want to have, truly multimodal consideration here, and we want to reduce the dependency on motorized vehicles, I think it would be helpful that of some of the retail property that is down there is, how would you say it, meets the needs of people, supermarkets and pharmacies and those types of businesses, and maybe you can't impact that, but I just want to put that in your ear is if we build, all this down there, transit-oriented development, but we don't give people what they need, they are going to get in their cars
And drive to it.
and drive away to it,
Yes.
so it defeats the point.
Noted.
Yeah, and I think that's a relevant piece. The other one that's interesting, and you'll have to wait for your proposals, but I think that's one that will probably appear there. Another one is, is someone thinking that there may be office space there and looking for professional firms that might otherwise have been in the city to locate right at the station as a way that is, super convenient to get into the city, but also to, bring employment to the community.
Yeah, I think we will see proposals that feature that.
Yeah.
And Paloma, the reference to the all-electric bill is on page 6 of the RFP.
Pam found it for me, thank you.
I knew it was in there somewhere.
Can you say more about the decision to not encourage particular number and size of units?
I would say we do that in part because we don't necessarily know what the best unit size for this market is. We're sort of taking the direction of the development community, and they would have a better sense in some respects as to what unit count really works and how to make the project financially feasible.
They can pay the consultants to figure out what's feasible and what they can fit and how they can best price it, instead of us suggesting it in an RFP and having to extend resources of the state to figure that out. Let's let the people who are going to have to build it figure out what works for them price-wise and gives us the best deal.
But I would reiterate that the conversations that we've had thus far with developers, they are expressing a strong preference for smaller units that, again, will most likely cater to one-bedrooms and studios. That is, obviously we won't know until we get the responses back, but that's sort of the information we've been receiving.
Yeah, I would assume that the more prescriptive you are with respect to counts and uses, the less likely you are to get a winning bid, because you don't know the market. Yeah, right.
I will also for developers and their consultants who are listening in that the Dutchess County put together a housing study plan a couple of years ago, and that also talks about the kinds of units, particularly that Beacon is lacking, so that might also be a great source of information about what we need and would work well here locally.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, and you may not know this, with the rush funding, is there a minimum units that are required to be able to get this funding? And are there minimum size requirements for each unit?
Sure. The rush funding is actually available only for the replacement of the existing Metro North spaces. So it doesn't really have any applicability to the housing itself.
Oh, okay.
This is just the money that the state is using. Because again, the difficulty that we have when it comes to building housing on our parking lots is just the cost of providing this replacement parking. So without this money being made available, we wouldn't be able to move forward with the RFP. And from the governor's perspective, it's money well spent if it can generate, a meaningful number of new housing units.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I've heard from Metro North, and you may not know the answer to this, that they're expecting to install bike lockers shortly. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes, it is.
And will it be at the entrance to the north lot, meaning the overpass area, or the underpass area, or both?
It's towards the overpass area. I forget exactly the spotting within the lots where it is.
Yeah, great. It's a start. We know you've already done the last mile study, and it's indicating, bike lane up Beekman. We're excited about that, and, we want the project to consider last mile activity.
We're big fans.
Yeah.
This is a bike storage with a canopy, is that right?
It's enclosed bike storage, correct?
It's enclosed, okay.
Yep. Locker sale, bike storage. We've had a few pilots for it across the different territories. Some have been more successful than others, mostly because of actually most of the ones in our outlying stations have been rather successful. We had a pilot for it by Grand Central, but the company that was piloting actually just went out of business, so it wasn't a problem with the actual thing. It was the national company that had the problem, not us. But every place that we've put in bike storage, be it enclosed or if it's just bike racks, we're seeing more and more use throughout our territory.
Okay. Anything else for now? Again, we're very appreciative of you coming right up front. We recognize the way you've described this, it's going to be a while before it actually comes forward, but that doesn't mean that everyone isn't talking about it, and this information is broadcast, is very important to kind of give the community context. So, thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you very much, and if you have any more questions, we'll obviously be having a continuous dialogue during this entire process, but if anything does come up, please feel free. Chris can get it to me very quickly, and we can get you answers back right away.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks all.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. Those are the two community segments. The next thing we'll be doing is public comment. So remember, there's two opportunities for public comment. One, there is a public hearing on the proposed budget. If your comments are about the budget, please just wait for that hearing to start up again. If you have a comment that's not about the budget, this will be your opportunity to do so. And I'm going to go off the list, and then we'll talk to people who aren't on the list. So there is a general comment. Is it Joanna Funnel?
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, tell us who you are, where you live.
I have problems with this. Hi, everyone. Joanna Funnels, 74 Howland Avenue, Ward 4 resident. I spoke a few weeks ago here about the need for better bike infrastructure in Beacon, and specifically touched on how shared use paths aren't a proper substitute for dedicated bike lanes. I want to continue the theme this evening, talking specifically about a certain type of linear park or shared use path, which is a rail trail. This is relevant to Beacon because I know that the proposed Beacon-Hopewell Junction Rail Trail has been mooted as a primary transportation corridor for cyclists going eastward out towards Fishkill. Now, I love rail trails. I love the rail trails in this region. I was just on the Ashokan yesterday. But if you use the rail trails, you'll notice something fairly quickly about all of them. They are all dawn to dusk trails, every single one of them. You can't use them after dark. They have no lighting. And that's by design. They offer a respite from the built environment. They have birds, trees, creeks running alongside them. And I think people feel that lighting would detract from that detract from the sense of nature and not protect against the nature there as well. Furthermore, many of these rail trails are not plowed or maintained in winter, and certainly that's the case for all of the Duchess ones. Now, that may be due to resources or political will, but I also think in large part it's by user desire. There are people who want to use these trails for winter recreation, for instance, and also people who have concerns about de-icing chemicals running off into fragile ecosystems. So I suspect that the Beacon Hopewell Trail is very much going to follow the same rules as every other rail trail in Dutchess and Ulster. What that means for Beacon cyclists is that whether the rail trail gets built or not, there will be certain journeys that we all need to take where we'll be forced back onto 52 itself. In the dark, in winter, that's going to happen. And to be clear, there are lots of journeys currently, that we need to take on that stretch. I just came back from Kelta, for instance, which is the new spa along there. There's industrial arts, Tracks in the Lofts have nighttime events, and there are people who live along there as well, both currently, and I know that's being mooted on the Downstate Correctional Facility and future housing along there. And I'll remind you that that's an equity issue if people can't get back after dark, even to their homes, without use of an auto. Now, you could say to me, well, just use the rail trail anyway when it's built, right? There's no physical barriers to them. But then that puts the liability back on us users again, and I suspect that some of that trail will be pitch black. So if we have an accident, if we're assaulted, that's tough luck on us, right? So I would urge you to build or think about proper bike lanes on 52. We do need them.
15 seconds.
We specifically need them if there are sidewalks being built on the south side, because we're risk of being boxed in between the curb and the traffic. So please think about that. I would love it if we could be safer on 52. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yvonne Carruthers?
My name's Yvonne Carruthers. I live on Glenford Avenue. I'm here this evening as a member of the Beacon Bicycle Coalition and also of the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee. First, let me put on my bike helmet. In the October 21st, 2024 City Council meeting, Mayor Lee said the following: the number one priority of any infrastructure involving bikes are the backbones. The backbones in our city will be the rail trail, and of course the fjord trail will be the other backbone. What you do with backbones is you build feeders into the backbones. You don't build parallel bike paths directly adjacent to it. I disagree that the proposed rail trail is a backbone of bike infrastructure, not least because it has yet to be built, leaving us essentially spineless, but also because, as Joanna just outlined, it won't be available at night and won't be maintained as an actual bike lane would be. As for the claim you don't build parallel paths adjacent to it, that's exactly what we find if we look at the Highline Trail in New York City, also built on an abandoned rail line. No one thinks it replaces the sidewalks which are at street level below and parallel to the Highline. In fact, if you want a cup of coffee or a restroom, you're compelled to leave the Highline, descend to street level, and use the sidewalk. The Highline would not be nearly as desirable without access to businesses nearby. The proposed rail trail is at least 3 to 5 years in the future. It won't connect easily to the businesses on Fishkill Avenue due to the fact that its elevation is quite a bit lower than street level for most of its lengths. If we want cyclists using the rail trail to patronize businesses on Fishkill Ave, it's imperative that we install a safe parallel system of bike lanes to allow full access. And now to put on my Fishkill Avenue committee hat. And here I'm quoting City Administrator Chris White from a private email. The idea of bike lanes on Fishkill Avenue has been looked at by both the city and county planners and the city engineer, and they have informed us that they don't make much sense. It has often felt to me, as a committee member, like there were preconceived objectives that the city hoped to accomplish when it established the Fishkill Avenue Committee. Because one of our committee's concerns has been bike lanes, so it's extremely frustrating to learn from the city administrator via a non-public email that city and county planners and the city engineer have, quote, looked at bike lanes on Fishkill Avenue and informed us they don't make much sense. What questions were the planners and engineers asked? Were they the same questions the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee is asking? I would like to request that the findings of the planners and engineers become publicly available, especially to the Fishkill Avenue Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Teresa Kraft.
Good evening. I'd like to give a shout out to everybody involved in the new firehouse. accumulated with a major success for the dedicated firemen in our community with a heartfelt ribbon-cutting ceremony. I'd also like to put it out there that now that Dan will be leaving the table to serve the entire Dutchess County, kudos to Dan, this council too will be going through a transition phase. Can this council reach out and get Randy Cassell back to the table and fill that chair with a man with integrity, expertise, and experience, not others on a short list that may only be in it for self-interest? Tonight's presentation, where to start? I hope the city goes back to revisit our comprehensive plan. Did anybody look into the Harrison Avalon project? It's very cookie-cutter development. There is nothing there that fits into our city's plans. This large build-out structure will obliterate our beautiful historic shoreline. I'm not buying it. 300 plus or minus, not everyone will be train only in those households. The Hudson Valley is an amazing place. We could potentially see 600 cars attached to that location, or Ubers, or taxis, or buses, or it's frightening. Our infrastructure cannot uphold the needs of this megatropolis for water, sewer, schools, traffic, etc. So the planners for MTA say that they will plan to build a connection to the city's public park, basically turning it into their private recreational wonderland. What about us? This project should be put back out to the community involvement meetings and charrettes. I hope many residents of Beacon come out and speak up to protect their quality of life and not let the state, MTA, developers, and investors have the final say. Didn't we just hear from a developer on Tyranda Avenue that he could not find one anchor tenant for his commercial project? I think this really needs to be really slow and thought out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to make a general comment? Okay. Tell us who you are and where you live.
I was very pleased to hear from the MTA people because I was here in 2008, and at the time I thought that...
Daniel, can you introduce yourself first?
Yes,
before
sorry,
you start?
Daniel
Thank
Aubrey,
you.
15 Water Street.
Thank you.
I was pleased because I thought at the time that Beacon had shot itself in the foot by not engaging in a creative conversation with MTA. So I'm very glad that we're getting a second chance. I hope that they'll come up with some really gorgeous design, and I'm hoping that we will all hold the developer, whoever that is, to extremely high standards. There's no need for a garage to be ugly. There's examples that I can cite in Miami, for instance, where they're beautiful, and they have retail incorporated into the garage. Anyway, enough about that. I really want to segue to something that the mayor just said about office space and how suitable it would be to have office space within the MTA proposed development. I think it's time that the city acknowledge that a mistake was made when the Fishkill development plan was put in place, requiring commercial space. What we really need there is more residential. What we're experiencing, I'm a realtor, is there's a huge demand for rental. The Edgewater development rented out in record time. They can't build it fast enough for the demand. So I think I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure, Arthur.
Arthur Kamens, 39 Rambat Avenue. Wasn't going to speak about this, but since I heard the proposal, I feel kind of compelled to. What I heard, well, first of all, I want to say, this seems to me to be backwards. Before any plan or any RFP goes out, I think it would behoove us to hear from people in Beacon about whether they want something of this sort there and what it ought to look like. Instead, what I heard is, here's what we're doing, and the way we're going to go about it is to let developers tell us what they can make, what they want, and what they can make money from. Because what I heard was a development that is going to be 90% unaffordable. We don't need more unaffordable housing in Beacon. We need more affordable housing in Beacon. And so I don't know what power we have, because this seems to be the MTA's deal here, but just want to assert that the voice of people in Beacon needs to be taken care of or listened to, and that number one in that is housing that is affordable to a range of people, not more studios and one-bedroom apartments, which seems to be the priority because that's what developers can make money from.
Thank you very much. Anyone else want to make a general comment, not on the public hearing regarding budget?
Clark Goodman, 2 Wilson Street. Good evening. I think Mr. Controller-elect hit it on the head, as well as the mayor, regarding shopping and in offices, Mr. Mayor. And the people who stood at the podium before me also thematically presented the same opinion, and that is, we're putting the horse before the cart, and it's up to the council to, as an efficiency measure to the development community that has aspirational goals that solve the needs of the community from the viewpoint of the community. There is no doubt that there is a demand for studio and one-bedroom apartments, but our national policy has an even greater demand for families and family development and the birth of children. And we're doing nothing in this plan to promote families. And why? Because attached to this is the scheme that studios and one-bedrooms don't increase school population. Therefore, it's a good thing, and then we'll give abatements for it. So in effect, we're anti-family building by accepting it and keeping quiet. Now, even worse is the dearth of information or advocacy for any kind of efficient rail transportation to the city. But I'll tell you something, the voters of this city want 9D cleaned up. And now we're going to put a building in front of cleaning it up. Can you imagine a progressively elevated structure from the train station up to the bridge and ramping and creating a circumstance by which the Orange County commuters can come and go from the city of Beacon with an efficiency that the people of the Hudson Valley deserve? We're putting roadblocks in populations of adverse opinion to solving our transportation problems by putting more residents adjacent to the rail line so they can attend the council meeting and worry about, oh, we don't want high-speed rail. We are being tricked. And it is the MTA that needs to be instructed from this council immediately. No go and declare a moratorium and have an honest, thoughtful consideration with the citizens of this city.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Stu?
Hi, Stu Weatherby, 66 Mead Avenue. I would like to talk about Fishkill Avenue. I want to thank the mayor for creating the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee, and would like to thank the committee for all of their hard work. Some of the things they are looking at are developing the land after a road is put in between 52 and Matawan Road, possibly developing some open space in Groveville and in front of Champrine, the rail trail, which is not that far off, how the Healy property should be developed, and how to build out 52 so it is safe for vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians. The proposed Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through, which will be located at the old Ford dealership, is being presented as a coffee house, which they can technically can call it because 60% of the sales are coffee. but we have all seen drive-through Dunkin' Donuts. They are all set up like fast food restaurants. They want a drive-through because mobile ordering is a lot of their business. That means much more traffic and a lot more garbage on the street. We had a lot of Dunkin' garbage up and down 52 from the last Dunkin', which did not have a drive-through. I would suggest to the mayor and the council to consider a moratorium and wait until the Concepts Committee can present their recommendations. We really only have one chance to get it right. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have a Concept Committee working on the vision of our new district while letting what's being called a coffee house to be built, which in reality is more like a fast food restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience want to make a comment other than on the budget? Ben, anyone online? Again, not on the budget.
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment this evening, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. If you're joining by phone, you will need to press *9. Lastly, if you're watching on YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom by visiting beaconny.gov and going to our calendar where there's a link. And as of now, there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. So now let's do our next item, which is the public hearing. So there was a public hearing on the 2025 proposed budget. It was adjourned until this evening. I will reopen that. And Nick, do you need to say anything before we start receiving any further comments?
No, Mayor.
All right, so this is on the budget. If you'd like to make a comment on the budget, those listed, first one is Arthur Kamens.
Good evening again, and congratulations to Pam and Amber and Dan on their election. I'm speaking tonight as a member, as a constituent and a member of Community Voices Heard and of BCAN, and I think you know already, because we've said it many times, where I stand on the need for the city to make tenant protection and affordability a priority, and restating that again. And so I listened, I was hopeful after the meeting 2 weeks ago, when people once again, as they have over many years, spoke in heartfelt ways about their needs and how they experience what it means to be a renter and live with insecurity. And so I listened carefully to the workshop meeting the following week. And I got to tell you, on the one hand, I was really pleased to hear several council members respond positively to the need for the city to put its money where its mouth is and put some funds, modest as they were, to help address those needs. On the other hand, it really made my head explode to hear the mayor dismiss those concerns as really not needed, and to hear both the city administrator dismiss and contradict and frankly condescend to city council members who were trying to speak in favor of it and say, well, you tell me how to solve it, essentially. And frankly, I just find that to be just outrageous, and exactly what people who more and more are not going to the polls to vote conclude, no one's on my side. That's how I heard what went on in that meeting. And I'm calling upon you tonight to, I wish I could sing, or I would sing, which side are you on? I won't do that because my voice, I can't keep a tune. But that's the question tonight. Which side are you on? You're being asked to put a very modest amount of money into the budget for a housing justice coordinator and some extra funds
15 seconds.
for legal aid for people. It really is the least you can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Teresa Kraft.
I just wanted to make a comment. I totally agree with that. That workshop was a little out of hand. I've been speaking out for this, the budget, and I believe that you should have a section for, it is a nominal amount of money that they're asking to set aside. And maybe the next time the budget comes around, there's more output to the residents that what should go into the budget, and ask them to come to these meetings before it's the tail end when you're voting for the budget, when you're putting your items together. That's when you need the input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ashley Bonds-Liptek.
Hi, I'm Ashley Bonds-Liptek, live in Ward 2 in Beacon. I'm here because I want the Beacon City Council to include the money in the annual budget for real solutions to our community's housing crisis. I'm thrilled about the proposed $75,000 line item for certain housing justice priorities on the table, but I think the city needs more money to fully execute all these priorities and to hire the housing justice coordinator who can help oversee the work. I feel fortunate to live here, but I have many close friends who have had to pick up their lives and move elsewhere because of high rents have forced them out of our community. First, I also am a member of Beacon and Beacon Climate Action Now and Community Voices Heard, and we ask that the proposed $75,000 budget line item for housing initiatives be increased to $150,000. Our current proposal splits this amount between two important projects: community communications, including good cause eviction, PSA, and the rental registry maintenance, and a mobility plan. However, according to a 2023 Beacon housing study, nearly 40% of renters in Beacon are cost burden, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on rent. With such a high percentage of renters struggling, we believe it is crucial that we properly fund these initiatives to provide adequate support and resources to prevent displacement. An increase in the budget would ensure both the PSA campaign and the rental registry are fully implemented, and they have the resources they need to help tenants stay in their homes. Second, we strongly recommend part of the funding to be used to hire the Housing Justice Coordinator. This role would be vital in implementing the strategies that we've been advocating for, including maintaining the rental registry and ensuring the good cause eviction PSA reaches all tenants. Data from the National Low Income Housing Coalition shows that for every 100 extremely low income renters in Beacon, there are only 33 affordable rental units available.
15 seconds.
So please take this into account going forward with the budget. We really need the support for the increase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Flynn Larson.
Hi, I'm Flynn Larson, also in Ward 2. I came here to agree with Arthur and Ashley, just to really advocate for putting funds aside for a housing coordinator, advocate, just to ask ourselves what is the kind of community that we want to have. And for me, when I think about like housing insecurity, it's so disruptive, not just for the families that are being displaced, but for the neighbors and for the classmates, for the whole neighborhood and the whole city. It's so disruptive to have housing insecurity in our city. It really compromises the fabric of our community. I mean, where do we want to live? I want to live in a community that has deep roots, and also we allow for new shoots of development, but also we want to keep those roots deep. People who have been here for a long time, I want them to be able to stay. I've been here since 2010, and And we have deep roots here, and I've met a lot of people who've had to leave town because they couldn't afford to stay, they've been evicted, all that stuff. So for me, it's really like, we just have to look inward and think about what kind of place we want to live in and how do we make it happen. So I'm totally in favor of what has been said about the housing coordinator. It should be a real priority. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael O'Leary?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael O'Leary. I'm also in Ward 2, and I'm here tonight to echo a lot of what's been said about housing and budget tonight. I want to see the council pass a budget that includes solutions that are properly funded to address Beacon's housing crisis. This council has shown leadership on this issue before by being at the vanguard of good cause eviction in New York, and I want to see housing remain a priority. The $75,000 line item included in next year's budget is another step in the right direction. But to fully support the solutions, we need to address our housing crisis. The 2025 budget must include more money to hire a housing justice coordinator who can carry out the housing priorities in the budget. We have friends who have left Beacon for Hyde Park, Pleasant Valley, Albany, all in search of a place they can afford to put down long-term roots. And they're not wrong for looking elsewhere. In 2023, the average rent for a market rate one-bedroom apartment in Beacon was $3,135 a month, the highest rate in Dutchess County. The anecdotes I've heard and the facts agree. Housing is a problem in Beacon, and it's time for our city council to fund solutions to this problem. I want the city to increase the line item in the 2025 budget to $150,000 to ensure initiatives are adequately funded. I think the city needs to prioritize spending that money to hire a housing justice coordinator. I'm not a plumber, but I have bought pipes, drain cleaners, and spigots with the intention of doing some plumbing work myself. Ultimately, that equipment lays around unused until I finally admit I should just call the experts and have them do it. Simply putting the money toward housing justice programs in next year's budget without bringing in a housing justice coordinator will put us in the same spot, having the right equipment without an expert to install it. Thank you to the council for your work you've already put in to address the housing needs of people in the city. I hope you continue this important work by crafting a final budget that creates the solutions and expertise we need to tackle Beacon's housing crisis. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the physical audience want to make a comment on the budget?
Hi again, Clark Ebman, 2 Wilson Street. When I left college, I went to Brooklyn. I grew up in Syracuse, went to school in Western New York, and I went to middle of Brooklyn, Flatbush, and was a tenant organizer. I used to introduce Chuck Schumer as my friend, and whatever the case may be, lobbies and rent strikes and all that. No one understands housing and rental in this community better than myself. And I will tell you point blank, this council's refusal to address the 4-family benefit in housing is the key. And Lee, you even said so a year or 2 ago in terms of your family in I think Long Beach or whatever out west. And you relied on rent and your family that made it affordable for ownership. This community is 5 square miles, and New York City is 308. It is a imponderable problem. But what we do know is that a 50-foot by 100-foot with parking building that's 36 foot tall can accommodate 4 families. And the owner of the property, if had the right to build that, had the responsibility that the other 3 units were forever affordable and with regulations and rules accordingly, would be a magnificent start to address the issue. Keeping it on budget, and I do have a couple of things to say about it, but keeping on the budget, I would recommend that you hire a professional to explain to the city the benefits of 4-family housing. It is the last and largest vehicle that can qualify for FHA filing of financial arrangements. And under that provision alone reduces the obstacle to middle income affordability and ownership. And for years, this council has ignored the issue. And quite frankly, it borders on, I wouldn't call it racist, I would call it elitism. And we rely on developers to come in to provide the housing that long-term families can go ahead and provide long-term wealth to their family and their children by developing their
15
land.
seconds.
And benefit. By the way, the tax thing, homestead taxes are going up more than non-homestead. Take the ratios, the amount that goes up, the amount of taxation that goes down. When you add and subtract, there's a 1 point difference. For some reason, homeowners are paying 1% more in next year's taxes than non-homeowners.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else in the physical audience want to make a comment on this public hearing on the budget? Sure. Come on up, tell us who you are, where you live. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Katie O'Brien. I live in Ward 1 on North Chestnut Street. I'm a member of BCAN, and I'm here because I'm joining so many others tonight in urging the City Council to invest significantly in tackling the housing crisis in its annual budget. I was very encouraged to see the proposed $75,000 for certain housing justice priorities on the table, but we really need more money to fully begin executing on real solutions to the housing crisis, including by hiring an expert housing justice coordinator who can help lead that work. These issues are important to me because I come from multiple generations of longtime Dutchess County residents. The rising costs of housing in the Hudson Valley has affected all of us. It has especially affected my loved ones who work in minimum wage and blue-collar jobs. They're already feeling the strain of the housing crisis. It's also my experience living in Beacon that concerns over the housing crisis are constantly in the air of the community. Recently, I spoke with an elderly neighbor of mine who told me that she's facing the upcoming choice between vacating her home for several months to allow our landlord to renovate her unit and then paying a significantly increased rent in order to come back, or permanently leaving her home of nearly a decade. She told me that she didn't think she would be able to afford to continue to live in the area and be close to her children. She also said that all of the units in our building used to be occupied by families of color and elderly people. They surely all left one by one for the same reason. From my perspective, as others have said, what makes living in a small community like Beacon so special is that there are people here from all walks of life. Beacon is increasingly a rarity in that way, but the longer we take to address the housing crisis, the more longtime residents, working class families, and communities of color will be forced out, and our town will become homogenized and disconnected from its history. It's time for the city to hit the ground running and take this seriously, and that requires true investment in solutions. I'm asking for the city to increase the budget line to $150,000 and prioritize using that money or finding the money elsewhere to hire a housing justice coordinator to take on this work and to implement key solutions like we've been discussing, like tenant education, about good cause eviction. Passing good cause eviction this year was great progress, and we need to keep the momentum going. This significant investment will show the Beacon community that the City Council is taking this seriously and taking action. Thank you for what you've done so far to fight for Beacon residents on these issues, and please consider these needs in final budget decisions.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's anyone else in the physical audience. Ben, anyone online?
No hands raised online.
Okay. On this public hearing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, any discussion before we do so?
Nick, would it be possible to defer that decision until we get to the agenda item where we will discuss the budget, or do we need to make that decision now?
It does need to be made now because you have to make the decision to adjourn or continue or close the hearing.
So there's
you certainly have, when the resolution is called to vote on the budget, you then would discuss the budget and have the right at that time to make any changes you wish to the budget. So by closing the hearing now, you're just saying that you've received public comments, and the council can then deliberate on the issue before it.
Nick, could you use your mic?
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All right, so all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, let's do reports. Where do we want to start? Danny, you want to start? You've got news.
Not today.
You have news tomorrow.
I'll have news tomorrow. No, I do want to thank the community for their support this past year, and thank you for the congratulations tonight. I really just want to say mostly that the firehouse ribbon cutting ceremony was a really tremendous event. It really felt like we were a part of Beacon history because we were, and really it's an incredible building, and it's going to keep us safer. And there's just so many good things to say about it. But really, the ceremony itself said a lot because there were hundreds and hundreds of people there to see their firehouse, and it was really touching. And I just want to give a special thank you to the volunteer fire companies for their over 100 years of service to the city of Beacon, keeping us safe. And I'm glad that they were represented and honored as a part of the ceremony. And lastly, I want to thank the mayor and the city administrator for their vision, because we could have done this more cheaply and not as well. But we did it. I think we did it just the right way. I also want to announce that I will not be having office hours in the month of December, but instead we'll be holding a ward meeting. And stay tuned for more details. You'll get more details on my Facebook page. Thanks.
I'll ditto what you said on the firehouse dedication. It was wonderful, and to hear the history of the past and, as you said, the history of our future. It's very nice. I had attended the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee meeting and also the Planning Board meeting. Listening to both of those, I feel we need to have a moratorium discussion on our next workshop agenda for the Fishkill Avenue corridor. In listening to last week's Planning Board meeting and the application for 430 Fishkill Avenue, the Planning Board referenced Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee, especially when it relates to architectural standards and vision of that area. There were also questions about allowing a drive-through, as it was unclear whether it is allowed for it, even if it is a coffee house. I also went back and watched the 12/4/23 council workshop meeting, which was referenced at the Planning Board meeting. And starting at about 40 minutes in, the mayor discussed the scope of the new Fishkill Avenue Concept Committee and introduced the chair, J.C. Calderon. It was said in that meeting the committee was to have 2 public workshops and present preliminary recommendations to the council prior to their final recommendations. Also, the council said there may be budgetary needs from the committee for any studies, professionals, and public workshops. There was discussion that a moratorium could be considered when an application comes to the planning board, which has now happened. This committee, the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee, started in March 2024, and as far as I know, no public workshops have occurred and no preliminary recommendations. Also, what we have been hearing from this committee and the public, this area should be pedestrian and bike-friendly with sidewalks on both sides. With that, I recommend a moratorium so that we don't undermine this committee by approving projects that would go against their vision. Also, I'm not sure if the chair asked if there would be any budgetary needs in 2025, but that was referenced in that workshop meeting back in last December. That's all I have.
Thank you. Pam, I will third an appreciation for the firehouse opening. I was not able to attend in person myself, but I appreciate the testaments to the importance of the event and to the accomplishment of the building. And I would also like to thank the council for the robust discussion at last week's meeting. I was in attendance online, of course, but I would like to reiterate my appreciation for Amber in particular, articulating a path forward for us to address a number of the concerns that have been raised during the public hearing the week prior, and many of which were reiterated tonight. And I look forward to discussing further when we get to that point in tonight's agenda. There were a couple of items I did not raise at that time for expediency, but I wanted to raise now. One is that I do not have any objection to the 3 detective appointments on the agenda for tonight. They are internal transfers with positive records within our police force. However, I am interested in having a discussion in public, if allowable, about the mayor's change in process and procedure of holding in-person interviews of prospective new hires into our police force. Additionally, we had a question from the public. These are not related to each other, obviously. We had a question from the public about our burn ban. I wanted to clarify and confirm that we still have a ban on open fires in effect. And with that clarification, let the public know what steps they should take to report violations of that burn ban. This question from the public also was interested in a clarification of where our reservoirs are at, noting that the Village of Cold Spring has issued a water emergency. Obviously, the fires are connected to the long-term drought that we've had. I know that the City of Beacon's reservoir system is much more robust than Cold Springs, but if we should be looking out for those additional drought concerns moving forward. And I would like to reiterate my interest that I voiced 2 weeks ago in a potential building moratorium on Fishkill Avenue until such time that the Fishkill Avenue Committee can complete its work. Pam said more about this, but I'll leave my comments at that. I also wanted to thank Chris for taking on the city's annual presentation to the Beacon High School seniors for the participation in government class and kicking off our annual participatory budgeting cycle. For the public who is not already aware, the city sets aside $10,000 in each annual budget and has for the last 4 years, I believe, and has established a system of allowing seniors at our Beacon High School to propose ideas of how to spend that $10,000 to improve the city. I appreciate that there was a learning curve in determining how this new initiative would work early on. I don't know how useful my memo back in 2022 was helpful, but I am very proud that the council and the administration have stuck it out these past 3 years, and I really see it as a successful program. We're engaging young people in the process of government. We're providing insight and perspective to city staff and the council on projects, and all of these projects are producing real benefits to all of our residents. And so I hope this is a long-standing program and an example of an initiative that was brought by the council, but that has benefits for everybody, including the administration. I would also like to add my congratulations to Dan on his electoral victory, though perhaps I should speak in the hypothetical for the moment and say that we have a potential impending vacancy on our council for the Ward 4 position. And I'd like to reiterate what I asked for a year ago when we came up with a similar vacancy through the resignation of Ren Longno, that I recognize that the city charter gives the mayor the power of appointment with consent of council, and I would ask for my consent to personally be given that there be a process that is public, that is inspired, in my mind, by how the school board handles vacancies. Though I'm aware that the school board does have its own charter and its own obligations, I would suggest an official public notice be given that a vacancy exists, and that for a period of time, I would propose 30 days, that an application, that notice be given, and that applications for anyone who is interested be sent to the mayor's office, and also encourage that process to provide applicants an opportunity to speak directly to the public about why they want to serve. And I would, submit those ideas to the council's consideration, and most importantly, the mayor's discretion. And I'd also hope that additional information that was shared via email in regards to the civil service process and data handling be shared in the public sphere when we get to those items in the agenda. And thank you for listening.
Okay.
Okay. I have two things. First, I wanted to extend a thank you to the Beacon Pollinators Volunteer Group. They, in partnership with the Recreation Department, have started work at Hidden Brook to create a somewhat sizable pollinator patch, and they had a great group of volunteers helping them, and they've had some really nice interaction with the neighborhood over there. So if anybody wants to get involved with that, it's going to be an ongoing project. I'm really excited to see how it evolves, and again, just a volunteer group doing some really nice work in our community that I wanted to thank. I will also, the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was Fishkill Avenue. I think we're all thinking about it and hearing quite a lot about it, especially since there has been a proposal put in front of the planning board. And I want to make sure that the city is able to impact any site plans and update requirements that fit with an agreed-on vision. I would be happy to discuss whether a moratorium is appropriate in this area. I also have another suggestion. I think it would be helpful to have some kind of update from the Fishkill Avenue Committee in an upcoming meeting, preferably this year if at all possible. And I would like to understand a couple of very specific things. First is just a status update on what they have covered and where they are in the process, what they feel they have left to deliberate, and then a target timeline. So those are three things that I would be very personally interested in hearing about. I would also be happy to help make a formal request to them. Mayor, I defer to you on how you want to do that. I'm happy to write something up, forward it on, but just want to make sure that we kind of get that on the table for them and let them prepare. I think it would be really helpful for the public and for the council to just get a pulse check on how things are going there. I will also mention that the meetings are public. I attended in November. There's really great work going on there. Again, just a really dedicated group of individuals who are working through some big, thought exercises at this point. And I see a lot of focus and care in their decision making. And so I'm really excited to hear from them. And that is all I have.
Thanks, Amber. So to echo the recognition of the firehouse ceremony that took place on Saturday, it was a great event. I was glad I was able to attend, even if I had to be masked at the moment, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't pass on my cough to everyone else. Related to my cough, as you might be able to hear in my voice, I've been under the weather, so I apologize for the delay in getting back to emails that were sent last week. I will be catching up on the things that are essential. I will also have office hours this coming Friday, December 22nd, from 4 to 6 p.m. at Bank Square Coffee House across the street from where we are now, or you can always reach out to me if that time does not work for you. And to echo what Paloma said, I also would like to talk about a process that we could follow for anyone who might be interested in becoming a potential Ward 4 replacement, should we eventually, in the future, get an official resignation, which we do not currently have. And so I see we have a workshop coming up next week, and then also December 9th is our last workshop. So if we happen to be able to make an official decision and announcement by December 9th, that would be ideal. I appreciate there's some things that are outside of the control of this council dictating that, but that would be great to get the word out. And then too, at that workshop, we could possibly talk about what process we might follow in order to fill the replacement, if we need to make a replacement as soon in January as possible. And then I'll also say with Fishkill Avenue, similar to Amber, I don't have a strong sense yet. I have not watched the planning board meeting yet from last week about what the next best step is, but I have heard questions and do have some concerns. So Nick, I'll kind of look to you and the mayor on some advice about what would be great to make sure that whatever is built there, approved there, coming up fits with our overall vision for there. And with that, I will pass it to you, Lee.
Thank you. I get to put in the record the letters and certificates from the dedication event of the new fire station. So this one is from Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So it's, dear friends, I am pleased to send greetings to everyone attending the dedication of the Beacon Fire Department Station. This ceremony celebrates the opening of a new and improved facility for the brave firefighters who serve the local community of the city of Beacon. I won't read the whole thing, but it is noted in here that it has been the department's been recognized for having the fastest response time in Dutchess County. So there's congratulations there. Then there was a certificate from Congressman Patrick Ryan. This certificate, since it's short, I can read it. A congressional recognition is presented to the Beacon Fire Department in recognition of the dedication of your new fire station. Your steadfast service and commitment to the community is deeply valued. Wishing you continued success in your mission to serve and protect. And I've got one from the state senator, Rob Rollison. Again, that's short enough to read. Certificate of recognition presented to the Beacon Fire Department Station in honor and recognition upon the occasion of the dedication of your newly renovated firehouse, with gratitude for your heroic commitment and dedication to the safety of the community. And then, not to be left out, we've got one from the state assemblyman. It doesn't say BFD on it, but it does say New York State Assembly citation, new Beacon Central Fire Station dedication ceremony, Jonathan Jacobson, member of the Assembly. I, too, had a great time, and I appreciate all the comments. It was almost 300 people in attendance, so it was a good event. A couple of things I do need to talk about. Burn ban. So that is still in place. I just want to provide you a couple of data points on that. So as mayor, I issued a state of emergency declaration and an executive order banning all exterior open burning, including campfires in the city of Beacon. I did that on November 1. The open burning executive order was also issued then. It's still in effect. Are we doing a new one, or do we let it expire?
No, it's still in effect. And it's
still in
continuing
effect.
because yours is more restrictive than the state's.
Okay. So the governor also issued a proclamation on the 13th. However, as Nick just said, our local ordinance, our local ban is actually more restrictive. And in particular, it's the all exterior open burning, and I just want to clarify what that means. So if you have a grill that closes and you're grilling outside, that is okay, right, Nick?
Correct.
Correct,
And we
all
can-
right. But open campfires, other open burnings outside are not permitted. This is because of fire risk on our mountainside and our woods. The governor's proclamation will expire November 30th. We may be extending ours every 5 days?
Every 5 days, that's correct.
And we expect to keep doing that for the month. So I just wanted to pass that along and just encourage everyone, please don't do any exterior open burning. And then lastly, I think you heard that the village of Cold Spring did a stage 1 drought advisory, so the city of Beacon is doing the same. So today, the city superintendent of water and sewer advises that the city's 3 reservoirs have reached 60% capacity, and that triggers a stage 1 drought alert in accordance to our code. Now, I do want to point out that it is based on our 3 reservoirs being at 60% capacity. Unlike the village of Cold Spring and other communities in the area, Beacon relies not only on our dams and reservoirs, but also on 3 wells that we run. So we have more than ample water. If we were considering all 3 in the criteria, we would not be declaring stage 1 drought, but the rules require us to do so if our reservoirs have reached 60% capacity, which they have. So having said that, and while we have plenty of water, I think it's important for everyone to do what they can do to reduce their water usage. So you should be checking for, fixing water leaks. There's no washing of cars except at a commercial car wash. There's no washing of patios, driveways, and outdoor areas. You should stop refilling and drawing city water for fountains, waterfalls, pools, lakes, or ponds on your properties. And then the watering of lawns, golf courses, et cetera, are limited in terms of times. That's sort of the major elements that I want to point out. Again, as I said, we have 3 wells that we draw water from. I'm not even sure if we're drawing from those wells right now, are we?
We are drawing.
We
from
are
the
drawing.
wells.
Okay, so we're drawing.
The only thing we're not drawing from is Melzinga because of the water quality.
Okay, so we are drawing from the wells, but again, the stage 1 drought alert only is concerned with the capacity of our reservoirs and not our well capacity. All right, so I just wanted to pass that along. Then just a couple of other comments. Dan's body isn't even cold yet. Come on. We'll get there when we get there.
May I clarify that I did win, I just I haven't formally resigned because I need to talk to Mr. Ward Willis first.
I understand. So let's just do the work, and I know everyone's excited, but we'll get there. There will be an opportunity, because this one is announced in advance, where we can, receive people of interest. I will let you know that, as before, my preference is for individuals who have won contested elections and have served the community in the past. That makes them extremely qualified relative to others. That doesn't mean others can't apply. I'm just specifying that's an extremely strong criteria in my book. Then on Route 52, I've already asked our city planner, who is our primary resource for the group, to come and talk to the council. We discuss what they would be bringing forward. So that'll happen reasonably soon. And then just as for moratorium, I'm sure we will have that discussion. I will note that the planning board, in the proposal for what is going on the corner of Conklin and Route 52, had exactly the same zoning in place, and in fact was missing the component that I was hoping to get in there quickly, which was form-based zoning. Even though it wasn't in there, that particular proposal, as it got through planning board, is a beautiful building. The only thing that any of us could see when we reviewed it was too much parking, so we tried to fix that issue. It seems to me, having listened to the planning board, they're going to use their authority for site plan approval to get that form-based zoning that they want. And you heard it very clearly on not just the proposal involving Route 52, but all of the ones that are before them. And so they're looking for, I think the phrase was not upping their game, but design befitting our community. And it may be worthwhile to have the head of the planning board come in and discuss that with us as well. I have not reached out to John. I will do so shortly, but I did compare notes with the planner who was at that meeting. Those would be more than enough items for tonight. It's already 8:45, and we should get on. Any comments from the city administrator before we move forward?
Yes. We will be continuing our bulk leaf pickup for at least the next 2 weeks. If you go to our website, which is beaconny.gov, there's a map of the city with the 4 quadrants of the city showing when we'll be picking up in each area. And that will really continue until it's done, but at least 2 weeks. I do want to let you know on December 2nd, we are going to have the participatory budgeting presentations. Right now, there are 5 groups. There may be as many as 9. So we're looking forward to that, and I think that's a great partnership with Beacon High School. The Fishkill-Teller Avenue project welcomed President George Washington back today, whose head is now replaced the pumpkin. And I want to thank people for their patience on this project. We'll be doing additional sidewalk work to fill in areas that weren't done previously because drainage structures had to be done. The project will be wrapping up for the winter on Friday, December 6th, and then taking a break until April 1. So the road is not going to be paved this year, but it will be paved in the first half of next year. We still have additional drainage structures that have to be done, so it doesn't make sense to do the final paving. There are also some areas of sidewalk that didn't ever get ripped up. That also has drainage going into it in the spring. So we hope that project will be done by next summer. We are going to do one more round of milling and paving this year related directly to the pipeline work that Central Hudson did. You may see there are trenches kind of all over the city that were where gas pipelines were being upgraded. So we'll be doing somewhere between 7 and 9 streets. We'll be milling next week and then paving the following week. That will include Coffee, Baskin, West Center Street from the Rec Center to South Avenue to finish out where we did the sidewalks recently, Dinan, Academy, Catherine, and South Chestnut from Walcott to DeWitt. We are looking at Beekman from Red Flynn Drive up past Dia to Walcott and possibly South Brett. So we'll see how far we get. I do want to let the public know that some of those roads have been paved within recent years, and when Central Hudson digs up a road, they pay us to repave it. So there's no cost to the taxpayer. And then I would just thank everyone who helped make the opening such a great success. Chief Tom Lucchese. I'd like to thank Elizabeth Barrett and Denise, I'm spacing on her last name, help me, Lee. Van Buren, for just doing a great job putting together that program for the color guard from the fire companies. And we counted 300 people at that event. And that doesn't even include some of the people that were milling about outside. So thanks to everybody that participated, to our rec department, which helped with the food, and all of you who came, and thanks. That's all I got.
Okay.
Sorry, can I request an answer on enforcement of the burn ban and the drought?
Meaning,
there's a question from the public about how to report violations.
So
You
it would
would
be
call
to
the police.
Yes, it'd be to the police, and then there's, I think it's $1,000 fine for the violation of the city's ban. I think
But
it's
if you
100.
see a fire, just call 911, you'll be fine. They'll route it where it needs to go.
Good advice.
Yes. We had a fire on Saturday from someone not extinguishing a smoking device. I think it was a cigarette, and somebody's deck almost went up in flames. So please be really careful. It's so dry out there.
Thank you.
okay. All right, let's do our resolutions. The first one is a resolution appointing Ryan Sambles to the position of detective. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion. Second.
Pam and Amber. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Second one, there's two more in the position of detective. So the next two are Kevin Sequest. Let me get a motion and a second to appoint Kevin to detective.
Motion.
That's Dan.
Second.
And Amber.
Sorry, Pam, I can't see you.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And then the third one is Samantha Milani, also to the position of detective. I'm looking for a motion and a second.
Motion. Second.
So that was Pam and Dan. And again, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. So the next one is appointing Samantha Britton to the position of recreation supervisor.
Motion.
So that was Paloma
second.
and Amber. Nick, would you add anything to this?
I would, Mayor, thank you. So the position of recreation supervisor is a civil service listed title, which means the city has to look to the civil service list. In New York State, there is a rule of 3, so when there are 3 or more qualified individuals, the city must pick from that list. 3 or more qualified people who are A, qualified, and B, willing to accept the position if offered. In this case, the list only had 2 qualified names, and in that situation, the municipality has the ability to go outside the list and appoint someone on a provisional basis. Once that individual is appointed provisionally, the county will then call for and schedule the civil service test, at which time the provisional appointment has to take and pass that test to then be appointed to the position, and the council would then take other steps as required by civil service law. So this is just a provisional appointment at this time.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Just to game that out a little farther, if we approve Samantha and she takes the test and there are still fewer than 3 qualified people, would that mean she continues to be and she passes, would she continue to be provisional?
So that is my understanding, subject to just asking one of my labor law colleagues about if there is any unique rule to Dutchess County civil service list, because I do think at some point when someone does serve provisionally after a certain number of years, they then become permanent, but I do need to get back and confirm that answer for you.
Great, thank you.
I think they remain provisional until they're callable, right?
I believe so, but at some point there's also been, I've seen some case law where it says after you've served in that position for a number of years provisionally, you then have become deemed appointed. So I need to confirm it.
All right. So given that this is a provisional appointment, all in favor of appointing Samantha Britton to Recreation Supervisor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Next one is appointing Peter Delfico to the position of Head Automotive Mechanic.
Motion.
Second.
So that's Amber and Paloma. Okay. Chris, anything you would add?
No, we have 3 mechanic positions, so this is for the head position that is being vacated by Steve Bechtel, who's been with us for 30 years. He's retiring in early January, so this is to line up the next person. You will see coming in December or January backfilling the position that Pete is leaving. So he's moving to the head auto mechanic, and then we'll be backfilling the senior auto mechanic.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of appointing Peter Delfico to Head Automotive Mechanic, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. So the next one is a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with Axon Enterprise for police department equipment and software. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Amber and
Molly.
Molly.
Smoky voiced.
Playing
I know, I said the same thing and I couldn't think
Yeah.
of one.
Lauren Bacall.
Yeah, there we
Thank you.
go.
It took me a
Yeah.
moment. From, Key Largo. Nick, will you tell us a little bit, not about Key Largo, but about this agreement?
I will, Mayor. So at the last council meeting, the council had 2 questions about this contract for police equipment with being purchased from Axon. The first was the ability for this equipment to be used for facial recognition. And the chief and I had a number of communications with the representatives of the vendor, and the material is not, the equipment is not used for facial recognition. It doesn't pass evidentiary standards, and the chief says he would not use it for facial recognition, and the manufacturer said it's not developed, designed, or to be used for that purpose. The second question was, does the company have access to the information that the city would be storing on the cloud and using for its police services, and is that used in any way for AI or development of technology or improving the program and used by the vendor? Our communications confirmed that the vendor does ask for customers to provide that information so they can use it to enhance their artificial intelligence and learn from others' experiences. However, we made it clear, and the program provides that we can opt out of, and so the contract will be written to provide that they are not to use our services for their programs, and they won't have access to it. So they've confirmed that with the vendor. It's also in the contract language, and it will be specifically called out.
I would just like to thank you and Chief Figlia for having those conversations. Probably not something that you all think about on a regular basis, so I appreciate that the follow-up and getting to a good resolution. I agree. My point in the discussion was that I didn't really want our data to be part of the data pool, and if it were to be, I think there's additional requirements that would be needed, but we don't have to worry about that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so all in favor of executing this agreement with Axon Enterprise for police department equipment and software, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. The other resolution is authorizing the city administrator, this is to execute a memorandum of agreement with CSEA. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Dan and Molly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't make her laugh.
Chris, this is our CSEA agreement, and will you give us a quick summary?
Sure. So we have we're under currently a 3-year agreement with CSEA that ends at the end of 2024. This agreement would be for an additional 3 years, running from January 1, 2025 to December 31st, 2027. It contains cost of living increases in the amount of 4.5% for 3 years, or alternatively, a flat increase of $2,750 for people that make approximately less than $30 an hour. So whichever is the higher of the two is what they would receive. There's not a lot of other changes in this. We really didn't, we updated a little bit of our sick time bonuses to try to incentivize people not burning their sick time, but rather accruing it, so if they need it, it's there, but then they can get paid out at a certain point for excess sick time that they have. And we also increased the bonus if you use 3 days or less, from 600 to 1,000. This was passed last Tuesday by a wide margin by CSEA. It only becomes effective once you pass it.
Okay. All right, any comments before we vote? I do think this is a good agreement, and I'm pleased to support it. So all in favor of authorizing the city administrator to execute a memorandum of agreement with CSEA, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
All right, and then the next one is a resolution supporting continued and increased state aid for local governments under the AIM grant program. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So Pam and Molly. Chris, you'll tell us this is just a resolution of support?
Yes, and it was requested by the New York Conference of Mayors, of which we're a member. The state aid is about the third largest revenue source that we have, coming in at $1.54 million a year. Last year, we had a temporary increase that was almost $180,000. This resolution asked them to continue that and build on it. It really hadn't been raised for at least 15 years before that. Again, if we pass this, it'll go in just with other resolutions to the governor.
Right, and as Chris said, it's about $1.5 million, hasn't changed in an age.
Right.
And that the ones in front of it are the property tax around 13 million-ish, and then sales tax around 6 now in the budget?
Yeah, 6 too.
All right. So it's a significant item. It's not the only item, but if you remember when COVID hit, we were concerned that we might lose state aid. It was this line item right here that we were concerned about.
And we didn't end up losing it, fortunately.
Yeah. So it would be nice to see that go up. So any comments on just doing a resolution of support? They've asked local governments just to supply them. All right, so all in favor of a resolution for continued and increased state AIM program for local governments, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. So the last item for the evening is adopting the 2025 budget. Can I get a motion and a second, and then we'll put it on the table for any discussion or changes?
Motion.
Second.
So Molly and Dan. Chris or Nick, you want to talk this through before we open it up?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I think this is where I move to amend the mayor's proposed 2025 budget to, 1, increase the city council line 1010 detail line 452020 entitled Planning Studies from 0 to a total of $75,000 being allocated to this line for the purpose of funding studies requested by the council, including a community-based communication plan and a study of accessibility to encourage non-personal vehicle transportation. And 2, to fund such costs by appropriating $75,000 from the city's fund balance. So that is based on what we discussed last week.
Second.
Okay. My only comment would be that you are, as a result of taking it out of fund balance, you're reducing what fund balance is used for at year end. And I did go downstairs and check with Sue Tucker. We use fund balance to pay down debt. So that if you are going to increase, you're going to fund this with fund balance, that means that we will be reducing debt slower than we would otherwise and will bear the interest costs. So I just want to make sure the council is aware of that choice.
Can I add a clarifying question to that then, Lee? Could we, because in the past, we frequently, we do it often, we transfer money in our budget. Could we, at the end of next year, if we haven't spent the money, have a motion to move money from this line item back to the general fund, and that could go towards debt?
Yeah, it happens regardless, right? So even if
It's
we
automatic.
don't allocate the funds,
Okay.
anything left over in any accounts at the end of the year go to fund balance.
So we're saying if we spend
So
it,
if
then
you
that'll be
yeah,
less
that's
directly
correct.
towards
That's
debt.
correct.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
Another clarifying question. We don't use the entire fund balance to pay off debt.
No, what Susan does is she targets, and tell me if I do okay, Chris, a general percentage of fund balance relative to the total expenditure of the budget, right? And it's by fund, so it's the general fund balance. And as long as we're in that range, she will use the excess, right? Chris, I do all right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, and in the past, it's been a significant source of how we, reduce our debt, right? Because we know that if we can't, we're going to have to go to the bond market, and that's a little high right now, right? So we're trying to do that. You also are aware we're going to be selling the 2 buildings, again, in part, the 2 firehouses, in part to reduce the $14.7 million item down to a smaller number. That's how we get it done. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, any other discussion on this?
I'd like to propose
I'm sorry.
additional.
This is just for discussion on the
Yeah.
Amendment.
On the amendment.
So let's do this amendment first.
I'm sorry, Plum, I thought you were going
Okay.
to make a different independent suggestion.
I was going to propose an amendment to Amber's proposed language. Should I do that separately?
Yeah, I think this one, let's just do this one first, and then if there's another one, we can do another one.
Sure.
Is that all right?
But is it the
But,
language?
right, 'cause if
Oh,
Paloma
if
was
it's-
asking
yes.
about the wording on this amendment, then it would be appropriate. I apologize. I thought you were going
No,
to a
that's
different
okay.
topic.
That's okay. Yeah, I'd like to propose to amend the language that Amber proposed to include a third item, which is the scoping of additional support for affordable housing needs in the city.
Are you proposing additional funding along with that, Paloma, or just specifically calling it out in the line item?
I would be interested in increasing the total amount to $100,000, but I am open to suggestions of other amounts. I am looking at, for example, Natalie as our currently hired city planner's hourly rate of $175. 100 of her hours would be $17,500. And then I thought $925,000 was kind of an odd number, but I am open to other suggestions.
So I will just give you my comments on each of these items. Obviously, every council member has an opinion. On communication plan, it's interesting. I have yet to really understand what it is that the city doesn't do that should be doing dramatically differently. I guess the only thing I keep coming up with is some sort of a newsletter. It's not the cost of the newsletter, it's the cost of the resource to generate the content for that. So I'm a little bit concerned that, this line item needs to cover the resource as well as the cost of doing so. As for the funding for planning studies, I'm okay with that, although I will note that last year the council was saying we wanted to reduce the speed limit. We actually figured out how to do that without spending our own money. That's the one that you'd ask us to do. We're going to be doing that this year. I'm just going to let you know that it takes a while to queue these things up. Don't be surprised if it takes long enough where we might not get to it this year. And I actually think the frequency that we do planning studies is kind of roughly one a year, and I think that's the one that's queued up. So I just want to point that out. And then lastly, on the support of additional housing, again, we went through that list. We already have a rent registry. It doesn't require any additional information. That works just fine. The legal aid seems to be fully funded. I don't see any other communities trying to offer free funds to legal aid. They seem to be just fine. Doing an ad campaign for good cause, I think, is an easy and not difficult thing to do and not expensive. And as for a housing coordinator, I just haven't seen anything in the job description elsewhere of a significant role, other than, and I will point out, the one thing I saw that I thought was interesting was trying to negotiate situations where a tenant is behind on rent with a landlord. While I think that's interesting, I just don't see that as being, something requiring a full-time party. All right, so I just wanted to pass along my views.
I just want to throw in that I was under the impression that the money we were earmarking for communications was kind of a more generalized interpretation that we wanted to do some housing communications. And I'm sorry if I misunderstood that before.
No, you're right.
That's right? Okay. Yeah. And then I just want to, a word about the funding, saying that we're going to use $75,000 and then possibly give it back if we don't use it all. I think the $75,000 isn't a particularly scientific number. It seems like a good ballpark estimate. I don't think $150,000 is a better estimate. I think what we are all kind of really committing to here is there's a couple things that we want to get done and we want to fund them, and we can handle those, the increase or the decrease in that line item through amendments. And so I would just leave it as is.
Yeah, I think that's right, which is these are small enough items where even if it's not in the budget, you could do an amendment, after the approval of the budget for these sort of items, right? And then I will also point out that, because you put it in the budget, that's the authority of the 7 people at the table. The expending of those funds in the end is under the mayor's authority, right? And so we'll have to kind of figure out, and that's been the one concern I have about our ability to do things based on resource. We'll find out, right? And we'll do what we can, and we'll try to figure out how to get this done, all right?
I just wanted to ask if the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee did come back, and I don't know if they've been asked if they needed anything in the budget, just based on the discussion that I listened to from last December. Could this be part of the money that could be available possibly to them, or would that give a reason to increase it to $100,000?
So my understanding, and Chris help me out, the funds that we were assuming for that committee comes out of the planner line item. We're running ahead of where we are. Are we going to need a budget amendment for this year for that?
Yes.
Okay. And then in next year's budget, is it increased or the same? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, Pam, I think we're okay there. I mean, the primary resource is, our planner's time, and it is taking more time than we thought. But I don't think there's a need, and again, if there is, we can do a budget amendment. The only other thing is we look to the county for things. I mean, they're the ones who are doing some sort of a countywide traffic study. We're kind of incorporating that. We've already done the ask of, well, would the county consider doing some sort of a bike study as well? So we look to use the county resources. If we find a way to get it done for free, we're going to do it that way, I can assure you. Mm-hmm. Right, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the planner is billing more than expected for Fishkill Avenue Committee because of the length of time that they've been deliberating, or because that she's been doing more work than expected in a short?
My impression is it's taken them a while to kind of get organized and settle down and get focused on their stuff. I went to the last meeting. I saw both Pam and Amber there. And the zoning components are quite advanced. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to see them pretty soon.
Okay.
The only thing I could tell that was missing, they hadn't considered a single property adjacent to 52 that's on the creek. I actually physically took Garrett Duquesne there right after that, and I think you'll see that incorporated into their recommendations. It's a very interesting parcel. But otherwise, I think the zoning components are about ready.
So Mayor, if I can, I apologize, but we had a motion by Amber. There was then and there was a second on that motion. There was then a proposed amendment from Paloma, and she then offered some explanation. Then we veered off of that, and there was no
Yes.
second.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Nick.
let's come back to the motion. There's, the one on the table is 75, communication and planning. I'm just going to summarize those three words.
Well, and then there was, I'm sorry, but then there was a proposal from Paloma, and then there was never a call for.
Yeah, I didn't hear it as a motion. I heard it as a discussion, and might we change it? Where is the council sitting on that?
Can I, a clarifying question? Because I think, Paloma, your language specifically was about sort of reviewing affordable housing needs. If we don't put that into the proposal, but we decide one way we want to use this money is to help pay for Natalie to lead some of those discussions, like around our inclusionary zoning, could we still use that money for that, even without that language
You
adjustment?
could. I worded it specifically so that says including, so that it's for these two, but whatever else you might come up in the future and propose.
So
you.
by using the words including, so now the keywords are 75, communication, including communications and planning.
Right. I could have said including but not limited to, but
Okay.
the quote was clear.
Anyone want to add anything to those keywords in the current amendment motion?
I would still like to add affordable housing as one of the areas that we are looking to address with the $75,000.
I'm fine to do that. I think that is definitely a desire of our community.
So can I just
So I'm going
suggest-
to amend my motion to say, do I need to read the entire thing?
No.
Okay. I'm going to amend the motion to say, including a community-based communication plan and studies regarding affordable housing as well as accessibility to encourage non-personal vehicle transportation. Does that work, Paloma?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion, the mover has amended their original motion. Does the second agree?
And that was Molly.
Yeah, yes, I do agree.
All right, so now the motion on the table has the key words 75, including communication plan, planning affordable housing.
Yes.
Not in that order, right? But
Right.
those are the main items.
Those are the main items.
Everybody okay? All right. Everyone, this is on the amendment to the budget. All in favor of the amendment as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
And Mayor, I did find the consultant was raised from 25,000 to 30,000 in the next budget.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
yeah, the consultant planner.
I appreciate it.
Of the budget, it's on page 29 of the PDF or page 23 of the budget.
Also,
See, I
too,
find it easier with the PDF.
yeah, I'm okay with this. I actually vote yes. Okay, now on to the budget. We had a motion and a second on the budget itself, and who were those? I've forgotten.
And it's a roll call vote. It was Molly and Dan was the second.
Okay, so on the budget, any further discussion? Oh, and I left out one key word, fund balance, right? But that's what we voted on, right? Okay. All in favor of adopting the 2025 budget?
Which needs to be a roll call vote, Mayor.
I will start with Councilmember Rhodes,
Aye.
and then Councilmember Grant,
Yes.
Councilmember Wake,
Aye.
Councilmember Weatherby,
Yes.
Councilmember Amar Blair.
Aye.
And Mayor Kyriakou, not a council member anymore, votes yes. Okay, thank you. Approval of the minutes. So now we got the most important item now for last. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of November 4th.
Motion.
So that's Molly and second,
Oh, second.
and Amber. Any changes, additions, et cetera?
I didn't have any changes.
She doesn't have any voice anyway. All right, so all in favor of approving the minutes of November 4th, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. So this is the second opportunity for public comment. I see no one in the physical audience who hasn't spoken before.
Thank you.
Ben, anyone in the online world?
No, Mayor.
He said no.
I think he said no. So that ends the
That is
second.
correct, no.
All right, second opportunity for public comment. Then announcing our next meeting is next Monday at 7 o'clock. It will be a workshop, not a formal meeting. It will be here, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
So Amber and Pam, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Ben.
The earliest we've ever passed. Keep ending up next earliest.